Denim Couch Podcast. Ooh, whoa, ooh, whoa, whoa.
The 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s with Steph with an F.
Hi guys, welcome to the Denim Couch Podcast, where we chill on this denim couch and talk about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm Stephanie Tanner. Welcome. Hey guys, it's Stephanie Tanner with the Denim Couch Podcast. This week's episode is episode number 12, and Lyle is our guest. Super excited, of course. I'm super excited to have you hear stories from Alice's childhood and teenage years, as well as her early 20s. So she's got some good stuff for us. Just to start off with, I wanted to go over kind of my main mission with this podcast. I was on Facebook this week and ran into a wonderful post by Victoria Prude. I just 100% agree with this post titled A Silent Tragedy. I thought she summed it up better than I ever could. So here's a snippet of it. There's a silent tragedy that is unfolding today in our homes and concerns our most precious jewels, our children. Our children are in a devastating emotional state. In the last 15 years, researchers have given us increasingly alarming statistics on a sharp and steady increase in childhood mental illness that is now reaching epidemic proportions. And then she states, statistics do not lie. 1 in 5 children have mental health problems. A 43% increase in ADHD has been noted. A 37% increase in adolescent depression has been noted. There has been a 200% increase in the suicide rate in children aged 10 to 14. She then goes on to say, today's children are being overstimulated and overgifted with material objects, but they are deprived of the fundamentals of a healthy childhood and lists creative play, social interaction, unstructured game opportunities, and boredom spaces. I love that. And then she also says children have been filled with digitally distracted parents, indulgent and permissive parents. And then I think the main thing that I like is that I don't like is endless stimulation, technological nannies, instant gratification, and absence of boring moments. She then lists off ways to combat this. Some of those are some of the ones I think pertain to what I'm trying to do here, which is just talk about being bored, talk about being creative and finding that creative time and being without technology and connection and seeing how people back in the day did this and what their life was like before technology bombarded them. That's kind of one of my main goals with doing this. And for me, it just reminds me through these interviews and through listening back through these interviews, what it's like without technology. And it helps me and gives me some examples of how I can be bored and be more creative and be more attentive and connected to the people around me. Enjoy a daily family dinner without smartphones or distracting technology. Teach them to wait and delay gratification. Provide opportunities for boredom, since boredom is the moment when creativity awakens. She also says, do not use technology as a cure for boredom, nor offer it at the first second of inactivity. She says, be emotionally available to connect with children and teach them self-regulation and social skills. Teach them to greet and take turns and to apologize and connect emotionally. Smile, hug, kiss, tickle, read, dance, jump, play, or crawl with them. So I like this and that it pertains to children because I have a child and I like children. And this definitely goes for them, but I think it also goes for us adults. We're the examples. If we don't have children, this is a great way to connect with people and to feel better and to just have some self-control and to control our lives a little bit more so that we feel that connection, but can also, use technology for our benefit. All right, so here is Lyle's interview. Enjoy. my first question for you is, can you tell me a little bit more about your name?
My name, Alice, was very uncommon in the 60s. In fact, all through grade school and all through high school, I never heard the name Alice as any student had the name Alice. Now at home I was called Allie, that was my nickname, but it was kind of a personal thing with my family, so they're the only ones that called me Allie.
What was life like back in the 60s?
I was born in Portland, Oregon, and I loved my house. I lived in Northeast Portland, and to me, when I was little, it seemed like a huge house. Since then, my siblings and I have driven by there, and it's like a little cracker box now. But I had a lot of friends, and then my dad came home one day and told us that we would have to move to California. Or no, to Beaverton. It wasn't California, it was Beaverton. And I was sad, and I had to go to I was in 5th grade when we moved. And then over the summer, I was in just ending 4th grade. And then but went into 5th grade, and I didn't like it because I didn't know anybody. And I met some nice friends. And then when I got into middle school out in Beaverton, I loved it. I had made more friends. I played on the softball team, and it was really fun because I love sports and made a lot of friends. And then I even ran for student body president, didn't make it, but I had fun. And then my dad came home with the news that we were going to move to California because he was being transferred. And I was just really sad. So went to California, and I was in my 8th grade year, and it was very hard to make friends. But I finally made a friend, and she lived at the bottom, way down at the bottom of the hill. I mean, it was probably a 15-minute walk. But she and I became good friends, and I called it the little bungalow because she had a cute little house, and her mom and dad were real friendly, and she had a swimming pool. And in those days, it was not real popular to have a swimming pool, but they had it. And so we would go there on the weekends, and she had a little bungalow type place near the pool, and we'd go there and stay overnight. Had a lot of fun. And my friend, even though she had a pool, I feared the water. So her sister did synchronized swimming, and she would not teach me, but she would show me some things. And I kind of got over my fear of being able to swim, because when I was younger, my dad would take me to the, I can't remember the name of it was like the Multnomah Athletic Club, but it was something else. Mm-hmm. And I had lessons, and I feared the water. Mm-hmm. And so I would walk on the bottom of the pool and pretend like I was doing all the things that they told you to do. And then came test day, and I almost drowned. So I still, to this day, cannot relax in the water. And it's hard for me to relax, and I don't do the strokes right. So, and then I went to high school and made more friends, and I had fun on rally, and like we cheered, but we were called song leaders. First of all, I was in a girls marching thing where we all wore the same dresses, and we do line formations on the field at halftime. And then I tried out for song leader, and you had pom-poms, and we wore these dresses that were green and had a little bib on the front that said Drake High School or the year. Mm-hmm. You know? And so, yeah, we danced did little dances at each, and we were called song leaders, and there was about 7 of us.
What were some popular activities?
When I got in high school, I'd go to the beach with my friends, and we'd go swimming at Peninsula Park, and they had crafts that we do in the summer, and Mom would send us with a lunch, and I went with my sister, and really liked sports, but in those days they didn't have girls sports. I really wanted to play tennis, and for a little bit in my senior year, I think I took tennis, but it was just a kind of after school thing where we played tennis. I really wish I was living in now, because in a way in high school, because they have basketball. I would have loved that, and I would have loved tennis. That was my love. When we moved to Beaverton, I was in 6th and 7th grade, and I used to play football with the boys in the neighborhood because none of the girls liked to play. So I'd go out there and we'd play and I didn't know all the rules, but I knew that you ran one direction then another, and they do not tackle, but they do flag tag. We do that. Football games were fun. When I was song leading, it was fun. I liked it because you could see the crowd and it made you happy, and cheering like you did when you were cheerleading. When I was in college, I liked to go to the Arizona Stomp, the Cowboys and wannabe cowgirls, and I wasn't a wannabe cowgirl, but I wanted to be where they were having fun.
Oh yeah.
Because if I go to a dance, I kind of felt left out sometimes, or I had a kind of complex that maybe I wouldn't be asked to dance. But at BYU, people were so friendly, but at the Arizona Stomp, it was just a different feeling. Everybody you'd do rounds, you'd go out in circles, guys would come and take you, you'd do a round, take your arm and swing you around, and so you were never left out. The 60s there was a lot of first things, like First Man on the Moon with John Glenn and his 2 other men, I guess it was, or 3 other men. And a lot of things were happening. I have a lot of memories of just walking up and down the hills where we lived. We lived on a real steep hill, and going to my friend's house, and just taking long walks. And it was refreshing to walk to school, because I had to walk 1.5 miles to school. And my kids always tell me I'm exaggerating, but it was a nice time to reflect and to think about, what you're going to take for the day. And I walked home with my best friend then, and my sister always had a car, so I kind of resented her. And so she'd always take the car, and we'll get to the part where you asked me that questions of anxiety. But I didn't drive till I was 19. I walked everywhere or took the bus.
Do you have any favorite memories from the 60s?
We had a great neighborhood. I used to take tumbling lessons from the guy across the street. I had some good neighbors. We would go down to my neighbors, the Koenigs, and I would do, they had a big mattress in one of the rooms, and it was like a trampoline for us, and we do flips on it, and we could spend all day there. And her parents were really nice. And as I got older, I loved going into San Francisco with my parents. We'd go there, and then after I learned how to drive, it was scary for me to drive there, but I liked going to Sausalito, which is just before San Francisco, and Tiburon, the areas there, they were beautiful. And being in the mountains, I'd never been to Colorado or I was, as far as going anywhere, it was mostly California, Oregon, and Idaho. I loved the different places I got to go. My brother, I'm trying to think, when he went to Vietnam, it was sometime in the 60s, but yeah, he served as a Marine. And then he came back for my wedding. It was just when the Vietnam War was ending. Yeah. And he came back, and he was in his Marine uniform. I get real teary, but it meant a lot to me when he came back. Was there for me for my wedding, for our wedding. Special. Yeah.
What did you do for fun in the 60s?
Okay, I was kind of a homebody. I would prefer being at home doing crafts. So I did a lot of crewel embroidery. It was fun and relaxing for me to do, and I loved doing mosaics with little tiles, and I would make my own designs, and I'd sit for hours doing little designs and making tiles like coasters or pictures or things like that. I loved to play the piano. In about second or third grade, my parents gave me piano lessons because we had a nice piano at home. And my parents were very musical. My mom and dad would sing songs at the piano, and we'd all sing with them, and dad would play the piano, and mom would do duets. Mom would do the treble clef, and dad would do the bass clef, and they'd sing together. And sometimes mom would play the piano, and dad would get out his clarinet. He could play the clarinet, I'll play the piano. He could play the trombone, or not trombone, but saxophone. Dad had a saxophone. And he could probably play the trombone. He used to play in a dance band years ago.
I didn't know
So
that.
they were very talented. Mom would play by ear. She used to play for a tap studio in Portland in the Broadway district. Anyway, I had a great start in piano. Then we moved to Beaverton, and they told me they couldn't afford piano lessons. So I was kind of sad, but I would make up songs. I'd hear something on the radio, like I can't remember the tune, but it was really catchy. And I would play it I'd make it up. So it sounded kind of like the music. And I didn't have any piano lessons till, gosh, when we first got married, they had a piano, and then I played that. And then I started taking lessons later, and then I still do continuing ed. Now I'm a piano teacher. So anyway, so about piano lessons, people have asked me over the years, why are you taking lessons? And I say, well, it's continuing education. Do you like to do continuing education? And they go, yeah. Well, I do too. I think that everybody should continue educating yourself, whether it be spiritually or piano-wise, you know. So yeah, I think that it helps me. I've studied since my boy was born in 1981, my last child, and it keeps me excited about music. It helps my technique. It helps my love of composers. It helps my self-esteem, and I love to teach, and I continue to this day to take lessons, and I will continue till I die. So I totally love music, and I wish I had all day to play the piano.
Can you tell me about your love story and how you met your husband?
My roommate, Jean Owen, she told me first of all, I met my roommate, my first roommate, Susie. Mm-hmm. My brother lived in Pensacola at the time on base, and she was on base with her family, and she needed a roommate. Susie was her name. She needed a roommate. And so Frank called me one day and said, hey, Susie needs a roommate. Could you go to BYU or try, apply? So I applied and got accepted. And then my parents put me on a plane. I cried for a week. I cried all the way to Utah. And but once I got there, making friends, and it was important that I did that because I was shy. It was really hip to be Californian. I had a tan face and everything, and so I thought it was really cool. And at the time we wore loafers then and culottes and things, and I just thought I was so cool. And so anyway, so it for months went by, in like 6 months. And so Jim called her one day and said, I have Donnie with me, his little brother. And he said, can I bring Donnie over and visit you? And so Jim came that day, and it was love at first sight. And we had just had chili, my roommates and I. So we were, having gas problems. And so I was running to the bathroom and to let the effect of the beans wear off. But he didn't know we were laughing about that. And so he wondered why I kept leaving the room. So anyway, the thing that he was attracted to, not just me, but more probably was my trunk that had Montana stickers on it. And he wanted to know, because he's from Montana. And so he goes, oh my gosh, who owns that trunk? And luckily it was me. And so he wanted to know all about Montana, where my dad actually sent the truck with me to BYU. Oh. It was shipped there with all my clothes. And so for the first 2 or 3 weeks, I had like one or two outfits, and I had to wait for that trunk to come. So the trunk meant a lot to me. And so anyway, so he asked a lot of questions about the trunk, and then a lot of them I couldn't answer because I didn't know a lot about my history, or my dad's history. So we all said goodbye to him, and he went down the line, and I was the last one in line, and he was going down. Bonnie, good to meet you. He got all their names right. But when he came to me, he goes, Jane, I enjoyed meeting you too. And I said, okay. And I said some stupid name because I knew his name was Jim, but I was ticked off. So I thought, okay, George. I think I said George. Nice meeting you too. And then about an hour later, and during the visit, Donnie, who is his brother, was going, Jim, can we leave now? Can we leave? And he'd say, shut up, Donnie. We're staying more. he left, and then about an hour later, the phone rang, and we were all excited. Like, could that be him? And so my other roommate, Jean, his cousin, Jean is his cousin. She answered the phone. She goes, "Yes, no, she's not dating anyone." And we were all laughing because I was actually dating a guy that was in the Navy, and and I had said goodbye to him when I first went to BYU. And so Jean kind of lied for me because she knew I think she wanted me to meet him really bad. So she lied, and then he said, "Okay, well, yeah, I liked her," and so then he called me about a week. No, he called me about 2 weeks later, and I thought, gosh, if he liked me, why didn't he call me? You know. And so I learned that he had National Guard, so he had National Guard duty, so he was gone that week. So then when he came back from National Guard, the next week was April conference. It's Easter. And I had planned on going with my roommates to Salt Lake for conference. And I was really excited. Well, he called and he said, "Hey, this is Jim Lyle. I met you a couple weeks ago. And I wondered if you wanted to go out." And I said, I was really kind of snarky. And I said, "Well, I don't usually date boys that ask me at the last minute." It was, it was just uncouth to do that. It was just not culturally right for girls to date somebody who calls you at the last minute. You had to be called at least a week so you can have time to think about this, And so he goes, "Well, okay, well, can we just go out? You want to just go out for a little bit?" "Okay, don't usually do this, but I'll do it." So we did. So we went on campus and walked around. And I was impressed with him. And then I think he waited a week because he had another something going on. And then after that, we dated every week and did something almost every day or whatever. It was, well, maybe not every day because he had a lot of work. He was majoring in mechanical engineering, so he studied a lot. And I had a hard time studying because I was in love and all that stuff. So I was not a good student.
When did you break up with the other guy? That's my question.
Oh yeah, I wrote him a Dear John after I knew that the relationship with Jim was solid. But then I was dating another boy before I met Jim. After I was in college, he had red hair, and I didn't like red hair, and I didn't like the shoes he wore. Not Jim, but this other guy.
Yeah.
And his name was Glenn. He was very nice, a good kisser, but he had ugly shoes. They were brogues. I hated brogues. But so we dated, and then for a while, and then I told Glenn that I had another one that I was interested in, and it broke his heart. But he would follow us on campus. He would, see us going to my apartment or whatever. And so Jim turned around one night and said, "Get the heck out of here." So anyway, that was how I met him.
I like that story. That's good.
Yeah. And then we dated for 6 to 8 months. We went home in the summer, and then we got engaged. Okay. And I lived in Oakland at the time. My parents were managing some apartments. They didn't live in Oakland ever, but at that time, it was a 20-story or 18 to 20 stories high. So when I dated Jim, we had to go up this big elevator, 18 stories. And guess what we did there? We kissed a lot.
Oh,
anyway.
That's beautiful. What was the style like back in the 60s? What did you wear?
We went through so many phases because there was the hippie phase. I wasn't a hippie, but we wore flowers in our hair during that stage of life when I think it was the late 1967 when the hippies got popular. When I was going to school, we wore dresses or skirts, and we wore A-line skirts, and they were shifts. They were called shifts, and they were like straight up and down. But they were so comfortable. And in the spring, I wore when it was hot, sleeveless dresses. And we either wore skirts and sweaters, and they were nice skirts. I remember my mom taught me how to sew, and my mom and dad couldn't afford to buy a lot of clothes. So I would go to the fabric store and my mom would help me, and I'd pick out, it looked like wool, and maybe some of it was wool, but or a combination of fibers. But I made my own skirts, and Mom helped me and told me how to put in a zipper. I learned sewing in high school from a lady named Mrs. Duff, and she taught me cooking and sewing, and that was one of the things kids learned then. And it served me throughout many years. I mean, I still have the cookbooks that I had then. We wore baggy pants, baggy corduroy pants. More worn they looked, the better. And textured tights. We wore textured tights, and that's coming back. We wore swing coats. Swing coats are the ones.
I like that.
Yep. And floppy hats, low heel flats, and tall boots. Now, I don't think I owned any tall boots, but we always looked nice for school. The girls always wore dresses or skirts, nice outfits. And when I went to BYU, when I started my education there, we had to wear dresses. Couldn't wear pants. We could wear pants on the weekends. I like to create. I just love to create. And when my kids were little, I sewed a lot. I sewed them a lot of T-shirts and pants, and they always complained that they were like little orphans because their mom had to sew all their clothes. But my mom made clothes out of clothes and clothes out of sheets, curtains. That was in the wartime. So the hairstyle was bouffant was the name.
Okay.
Bouffant. They had it real puffy, and they would wrap their hair. They would backcomb it to make it look fuller. Tons of hairspray. I didn't like hairspray, so I didn't. Only if I was going on a date, I had real long hair, and I'd put it tightly back, and then I'd put it in a bun or in a ponytail. But I'd have it, and then I'd spray it really good so that I couldn't stand hair in my face.
Okay.
There was a certain haircut where you'd cut it a flip. We wore it when I was in high school. I wore my hair in a flip. You know what the flip is? Yeah,
like that.
The hair goes up on the ends. That was real popular. Back then, we used, if we wanted our hair to be really, really bouffant-y, we'd get these really, sometimes we'd use orange juice cans.
Oh, wow.
And put them, we had really long hair, and we'd wind it up. And then if my hair was short, we had sponge rollers, those sponge rollers.
Yeah.
And you'd have little marks where the clip went on it, you know. Culottes and loafers were really popular and then loafers all the time. But that's probably why my feet are so bad.
What made you happy back in the 60s?
Just my grade school years were great. Middle school, high school, my friends brought me happiness. The music of the 60s, that brought me happiness because I love music. I love listening to the Beatles. The Beatles were popular.
Oh, yeah.
I love listening to the music, and my parents had a stereo or a phonograph and in their living room, and in those days it had a nice sound to it. We thought, nowadays it would not sound good, but we used to play our records. We had records, big records, 33s, and we'd play our 33s, and when Mom and Dad were gone, we'd torque up the sound and play the Beatles and the Jefferson Airplane was one of my favorite, the Jefferson Airplane Band. I went to see them, and I went with a guy on a date to the Jefferson Airplanes. It was really fun. And then the Mamas and the Papas, loved them. They sang a song, Go Where You Want to Go, and California Dreamin'. I never saw them in person. I saw the Rolling Stones in person.
Oh, that is
cool. I went on a date. His name was Dan, and I had a good time, and I was a real shy person, so he probably thought I was a nerd. Anyway, the music was really loud, but they sang, I don't get no satisfaction. It was so cool. And it was just everybody screaming, and it was really fun. Of course, my parents didn't like them, and they didn't like any of our music, that we played in those days. But, and in those days, I didn't really like a lot of classical music that they wanted played, but I listened to it, so I got to appreciate it. But, so music brought me happiness, just hearing music and having friends and that, you did things with, and high school was fun, just all the things. And then when I didn't have high school and I went to college, I missed high school terribly.
Mm-hmm.
The first month was hard because I missed my family. I'd never been away from home, never. I was kind of grumpy when I first went there, and I wasn't smiling. And I remember somebody saying, "You need to smile more," So I decided I'd be happy, and then you get more friends. And
Were you ever scared, unhappy, or anxious back in the 60s?
I would say, yeah, I had some scary or anxious moments, sad moments. One was when JFK died.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was in English class, and my teacher was very strict. His name was, I think his last name was Belgrade. And everyone feared for that class because he was very strict. He made you write essays and things. And I wasn't good at writing essays, but I could spell things, and I could do vocabulary. I could memorize really well. So one day we were sitting in English class, and I think it was in the morning, and the intercom came on. It said President Kennedy has been assassinated. And I still, tear up when I think about that day, because it was a shock to everybody. I mean, the world stopped. It really did. It just, or my world stopped, but we were told to go home right immediately. So everybody got their books, went to their lockers, put them in the lockers, or took home their books, and everybody was crying. And we had to walk, I had to walk a mile and a half, so it was just awful. And we were crying, and we got home, and for 3 days, the nation was glued to the TV. A real anxious, scary time for me was, I always worried about learning to drive. I always wanted to learn to drive, but I didn't have any real, excitedness about doing it right away. I was scared, so I kept putting it off. And one night I was doing a sleepover at my friend's house, and she said, "I'll loan you my car." And it was they called it the lemon car. And she said, "It has an automatic." Well, in those days, my dad insisted that we learn on a stick shift.
Mm-hmm.
So I came home one day and I said, "Dad, I'm going to go get my license." He says, "Oh, no, you're not over my dead body." And I said, "Well, my friend's going to loan me her car, and it's a stick shift." I said, "I'm going to do it." And so one day I came home, and I studied the thing, and I passed, and I went and took my license and got it. And but then I knew, what good is it going to do me? We didn't have an automatic, so I would have to learn a stick shift. Well, I went out with my dad, and he was super nervous, and he would lunge if he thought I was doing something wrong. He'd go, "Oh no, we're gonna, don't do that, and don't do that." That was hard for me, and so I made this index card with all the shifting things, and I put it on the dashboard. And so when I was first driving, I thought, "Oh, please turn green, the light, please turn green. I do not want to have to shift," because I'd lunge when I shift. So I always stopped about 3 feet behind the car because I didn't want to hit the car.
Yeah.
Well, I did okay. There were a lot of lunge times, and then I had to go up a real big hill. We lived on Knoll Road, which was a steep hill. My dad was always standing at the window when he knew I was coming home, because he was sure that I was going to be the one that went through the garage door. Well, did I ever? No. But guess what? My sister, who he really trusted, she made a big, crashed into the garage door. So I just made a big deal about it, teasing her about it. So anyway, then finally I did better. But then the scariest part was going into San Francisco on those hills.
Oh yeah.
Where you had cars lined up behind you. And so I had to shift really fast and get my foot on the pedal. And I did fine, but that was scary. Then I was real confident, and I would go anywhere, any hill you take, because we had hills all over San Francisco.
How would you compare your childhood or teenage years to today's kids?
Okay. I would say the social media thing is the big difference, I would say. When I went to school, we came home, we studied. The only distraction we had was the TV, but we didn't really have many stations then.
you couldn't watch late night TV because there was nothing on. There was a screen that went on that was an ugly picture just of a circle and lines through it. So we had to be creative. We had to read, do our studying, but we read. We did puzzles. We were taught etiquette and things like that. We learned we had to set the table every night and help mom cook. We had to respect our elders. So when people came to visit, we were told that we had to go, "Hi, Aunt Helen, how are you doing today? So nice to see you." You were told to shake people's hands we just were taught to communicate with people. And I was very shy. So when I was younger, my mom would say, "This is my youngest daughter, Alice. She's our baby of the family," and I always hated that.
How would you define happiness?
I would say happiness is forgetting about yourself and thinking about others and doing things for others. In our church, we have a ministering obligation to look out for our sisters and brothers and look out for our families that we have in our ward, or in our family, in our church. We have to look after our friends, even if they're not members of our church. We look after them. Be a good Samaritan. Making the best of a difficult situation, not blaming others, and I'm guilty of that, blaming others when I come to a crossroad. I know when times get tough, sometimes I get depressed about things, so I go play the piano. I love music. Music helps me get over sad times. So happiness comes from being friends with others too.
Is technology a good or bad thing? What do you think?
I think technology is wonderful for a lot of reasons. Kids nowadays are so smart. Kids nowadays are very technology minded and very smart. And so I think technology has done wonders with a lot of industries. It's made a lot of jobs for people. I think that kids nowadays, it's sad because when we go downtown or just to a store to buy groceries, everybody's on their phones, mostly the younger generation. And I waste time on it sometimes, maybe every other day. I try to keep myself to 20 minutes.
That's great.
But I found myself, and a lot of times I like to make cards. So I can spend hours looking at cards online to get ideas. I think the younger generation should learn to put down their phones more often. For example, when you're in a family gathering, I go to a restaurant with people and I see families, they're not engaged. They're all on their phones. Yeah, it's kind of a crutch. And kids don't get people. I always say kids, everybody, you don't engage. You don't know how to engage with people if you're on your phone.
Hey everyone, at the time of this recording, it's December, and if you haven't already, you should check out the Christmas special. It's full of stories from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's just magical, so you should check it out. Anyways, I love these interviews. They are so entertaining. I'm learning so much about the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And yeah, I think it's great. Alice had so many great stories, and I love the unique personalities that come through each of these stories. You can definitely tell each and every one of these people has a very different personality. Alrighty, signing off. This is Steph with an F, or Stephanie Tanner, whichever. Talk to you next week. Bye. Wait. You can't miss the embarrassing story of the week. No. Okay. It's that time. It's Steph with an F's embarrassing story of the week. All right, it's that time. It's time for embarrassing stories. And this week, my embarrassing story is embarrassing. It's one that's kind of lingered with me throughout the week. And I'm like, man, that was awful. But that's okay. So last time in episode number 9, I think it was, my embarrassing story was something about saying a word wrong. And ever since I admitted that, I seem to be doing this a lot more now. So within the last couple of weeks, I've been saying quite a few words wrong or attempting them wrong the first time. So I get it wrong the first time, and then I have to correct myself and say it right the second time, which is awful because I use words to do this podcast, and words are very important. So we're working on it. But anyways, this is the story. Okay. My husband and I really like to go to Barnes & Noble because we like the environment there. It's a getaway. It's kind of our date night, and we just get food from the Starbucks, and then we go and browse for books and sit there, and we're really happy. So one of these weeks, actually it was this week, I am in line to get some food at Starbucks, and there is a guy sitting right behind me in a Santa hat. And my initial thought was, oh, that's so awesome. He has the Christmas spirit, and I really like that. And I made eye contact with him on accident. And it was the type of eye contact where you can't ignore it. You have to say something. And so I, took a step closer to him and tried to say, I really like your Santa hat. Thank you for wearing it. It brings, Christmas cheer to us all. And all of those words jumbled into mush. And it was like, Christmas, nice hat, you look great, great look you. It was awful. And I felt like I was saying the right things, but the right things did not come out. And usually I have little mishaps of this, but this was bad. And he just smiled at me nicely. And I took a deep breath because I had to say this correctly because I didn't want to think like I was nuts. I guess I didn't want him to think that I was nuts, which he probably thought I was. And so I took a deep breath and I said, words are hard. And then I said the correct words to him. And then he proceeded to show me his totem pole, Christmas themed totem pole that he had made for his parents 15 years ago on his phone. So, so that was super embarrassing. And I guess I should now avoid anyone in a Santa hat or else. So that's my embarrassing story for this week. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time. Looking forward to next week's episode where we hear from the husband of Alice, Jim. Don't forget to catch up on any episodes you have missed. Thank you so much for listening, and happy 60s.
If you came here for mental health help, please go visit your doctor. If you're looking for some mental health tips, Dr. Daniel Amen is someone I follow. I love what he has to say and offer. I think his website is brainhealthassessment.com, and he just has some awesome checklist items that go over brain health habits that you should be doing to have better brain health. I want to say there's like 5 to 10 items, and if you have those, if you're working on those habits and trying to improve them to improve your brain health, you'll also improve your happiness level, because brain health equals mental health. So keep your brains happy and healthy, and check out Dr. Daniel Amen. This is not sponsored. I just really like what he has to say, and I think it's really beneficial. I think it can help a lot of people. It's actually very matter of fact, kind of obvious, but yeah, we neglect so many of these habits daily. And I do feel like, if you're feeling unhappy, that may be one of the reasons you're unhappy, because you're neglecting your brain health, which is also your mental health. And yeah, trying to improve these habits could really help. So check him out. If you have any stories from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, please get in contact with me. Let's chat. I want nothing more than to chat about the past. I want nothing more than to chat about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. If you have any specific questions that I'm not asking that you would like to know about these eras while interviewing these people, please let me know. I would love some advice and I would love your input. So, what would you guys like to know?